Very interesting.
So I came all armed with St. Paul's, thinking there'd be a lot of St. Paul's questions, but if there are other questions, I thought we should probably field those first, because St. Paul's is never a short conversation.
That's true.
So I did get some input on a paving question and that signage. Do we have, anyone want to raise a question? Yes, other than St. Paul's.
Sure. I live at 2227 7th Street. It's a condominium. The parking lot behind it always had 10 or 12 untimed parking spaces. Apparently, all of the parking in that lot was changed to 2-hour parking, unbeknownst to any of us.
211 Stewart Avenue?
No.
Oh, 211 7th.
7th Street, southeast corner of 7th and Franklin. When the residents of that building go on vacation, such as myself, I like to park in that lot in an untimed spot, because I feel like it's much more safer for my vehicle rather than parking on the south side of the surface railroad tracks. Because one time when I went on vacation, myself and another lady that happened to live in the building, I came back to an imprint of a basketball
Of course.
on the hood of my car,
No good?
and she had the roof of her car with an imprint of a basketball. It crushed the middle of it and brought the roof down. We both had to pay for those repairs ourselves. If we could just get a couple of untimed spots, I work until 3 o'clock. So I'm home at 3:15. I have to set an alarm on my phone now to go out and move my car so that it's closer to the building, because I'm not leaving it in that south lot overnight. It's just way too dangerous. And with the theft of catalytic converters, I don't believe that that lot is patrolled enough. And I have no recourse if anything happens, because I know that the insurance policy is not going to pay for any damages. The other thing I'd like to bring up is the music from the promenade every Friday night that ruins my summer every year, which I know has been canceled for September. It's torture. It's like having a live band at the foot of my bed. And then that stops at 10 o'clock, and then Croce starts their live music until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Why they're allowed to have live music after 8 o'clock is beyond my comprehension. And it's every weekend. So if something could be done about those two issues, I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for bringing them to us. We'll put the mic is on the traffic commission, so we'll
Great.
get on the next agenda, the traffic commission agenda. When something gets on there, it's discussed while the commissioner there will understand why the changes were made.
Thank you very
address your
much.
complaint. And you can always come also to the traffic commission meeting. If you'd like, it's an hour before the board of trustees meeting.
Okay, good to know.
It's always good to be there if you need to make sure your voice is heard. They may have some reason and it's, you want to respond to something else, so if you can make it.
Great, thank you very much.
Right, you're welcome.
Could you give us an update on what's happening with the land next to the cathedral in terms of the potential development? And I know I asked this back on May 24th when we were meeting, and I know I was told it was zoned for single-family residential, but that will not be its highest and best use, so it will probably become multifamily. And in many other states, they have impact fees, and I know that they're not done here.
Sorry for it.
But I would suggest that the board study implementing impact fees, so that way the village could get paid a considerable amount of money for that site being developed. So I recall in California, this was in 2008 when I was there, touring single-family building, construction, and they would charge between $50,000 and $70,000 per single-family home. And that was in 2008, and there's considerable inflation between then and now. So I don't know what you would charge. You would So I don't know what the procedure is for doing something like this, but I would suggest that the village study that issue and seriously consider it because it might be put more strain on construction.
So since the last meeting, when you brought that up, we did have a meeting with the Smithsons and the Illinois Civic Cathedral. And they assured, I mean, we're watching this, we're concerned about our concerns, but they assured us that there's no plan to sell that land or the development of the property. He shared some landscaping ideas they have. We expressed our strong desire to reopen the roadway. And that is something, we are putting together some plans to go back to the cathedral, hoping to have something that would fit into their landscape plans. So, that's where we're at with the cathedral, but I was watching.
Isn't that a Garden City Road?
It's not,
It's not.
yeah.
We don't have a right of way? Nothing.
We were always able to use it, but then they decided to close it down, and it is their property, unfortunately.
So, we are working on it.
I have some questions.
Sure.
Well, I guess everybody knows that Grove Street is a total fiasco, and it really needs to be repaved. The potholes are terrible, children are running back and forth. I've seen some fall in potholes, I've seen adults fall, and, it really has to be repaired.
I don't have the timeline on the Grove Street even.
It's been going on for years.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
yes, I'll for John Peroni, I guess.
Was that part of the delay with the, putting that up?
Yes.
Okay, so we, you know what, I'll ask them to put an update on the website as to the status on Grove.
I'm starting to look at there. I thought that there was a suggestion to do Grove and Converting Meadow while you were waiting, because I know you're trying to do work on the flood issue.
Right.
While you were waiting for that to be done, to try to do the other parts that weren't affected by that. I thought maybe in the fall, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak up,
Yeah,
have
please.
to talk to John Baroni, who's our DPW superintendent, and get the update.
Okay, two more things. Good.
Sure.
Okay. The other thing is, could we put a stronger light on Clinton and Brook? You can't see that signage for Brook. And there's, a Garden City light that's, so dim that it doesn't do too much good. And I know that you do have brighter lights, in town, and could you, disperse a few of them around the eastern section?
So a brighter light by Brook Street where you could actually see the sign.
Right, exactly, Brook and Clinton, and also, throughout the eastern section, the majority of the old Garden City lights are very dim, and I believe that you have a new light bulb that's much brighter. I saw it over in the States area.
You're talking about the LEDs.
Yes, I am.
I believe they're being cycled in.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay, that's
Right.
fine. And, my last, comment is, there is a bump that's, on, between Sixth and Seventh Street by the library from the, train tracks. And could you put a sign up that there is a bump there? Because it's quite an extensive bump. I always forget about it, and it's really bothering my car.
Is it the new crossing
It's
that
by
you're talking about on Cathedral or?
Yes, exactly.
The cathedral one that they just redid.
Yes.
Did they just redo that?
Yes, they did that quite.
With that bump?
It was the subject of a lot of discussion
Yeah.
as to the turn and the track, the reason that it couldn't be flattened out, and, so a sign for that bump, I know the bump you're talking about, and I'll check to see if they ever came up with any,
That's ridiculous.
ideas
All right, thank you.
smoothing it out.
That's it.
Okay. All right, any other?
Oh, I had one or two other questions. When are what percentage of the workforce is subject to collective bargaining agreements approximately?
Almost all, but I don't have the percentage for you.
It's actually very simple.
What?
It's actually very simple. It's everybody except for the executive staff.
Okay, that's not.
So if you take the head count of people, minus either 8 or 9.
What?
Yeah, there's only 8 or 9 who are part of this. So I'd have to kick off my sheet.
And then second, when are the collective bargaining agreements up for renegotiation or renewal or whatever you want to call them, their contracts?
Depends on which union you're talking about, whether it's police, supervisors, general staff, regular staff.
We just renewed the police.
Mm-hmm.
Just renewed the police.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I'm sorry, we just renewed the policemen's.
Right, because in certain parts of local government or Nassau County, a lot of changes are being made and the contracts are being negotiated, where the unions are forced to give up this. So, in one of the Nassau County ones that was just signed, it wasn't the cities, but, must have been the general employees, they are required to justify 6 months to see close to time. So I'm just bringing these things up. I'm almost done with my analysis that I was sending you, and I'm sure it will be very illuminating in terms of certain of the underlying trends of the village, which are very concerning to me. So they double the requirement from 10 years to 20 years for post-retirement healthcare for these workers. It was in the newspaper in the past week. I don't have that with me, but they did say that. So I just mentioned.
Thank you.
You're talking about a distinction between vesting and benefits.
This was for vesting. And so where they need to, because there was the issue of like, you can also have retirement ages where you can be vested, but you still might not collect until you reach a certain age. This was for vesting, where they needed to work twice as long. I don't know what the village's requirements are for vesting for post-retirement healthcare, which is the village's single largest village. And it's something that just continues to grow. Part of that is a matter of fact that New York State law, funding, because they know that if they have funding, benefits will be reduced, because that's what happened in the private sector in the early 1990s when FASB, which is the accounting body for public enterprises, for private enterprises companies, changed the rules.
So they went from defined plans to 401Ks
No, this is for health.
for healthcare only.
This is when the healthcare liabilities need is going down the sheet. And you need income statement. And after that, there are very few large companies that offer post-retirement healthcare insurance. So that all radically changed. However, due to the way that New York State does not allow funding, it is prohibited for post-retirement healthcare, that, and the accounting, although it's going on the balance sheet, it doesn't go through the normal fund accounting, because we're still using the modified accrual accounting for fund balance for the village and the library and things like that. So I just bring that up because it's a very large cost and continues to grow.
Did you have another question? Thank you. Yes.
Hi, so my name's LJ Asif. Chris and I are both members at the platform tennis courts in the rec center by the tennis bubble. We just wanted to bring up the issue of maintenance on the courts, which has been lacking over the last few years. And just to give a little context, there's about 160 members of the platform tennis. They each pay a couple $100 a year to play there. Generally, the season runs from September to March. In the last couple of years, maintenance has been really poor on the courts. The courts have kind of like a hard decking and they chip over time. So what happens is, since they don't have any kind of regular maintenance schedule, these chips just become more and more prevalent across the court, and it's become a very big slipping hazard. So as you're playing at night, when you're kind of running back and forth, if it's just bare metal, people are gonna slip and fall, and people are gonna get hurt. We've raised the issue a number of times. We tried to get contracts and proposals. I think they had something since April. There was another, I think they're waiting for another bid. They waited 4 months, I think, before that person decided they weren't gonna actually provide a bid, so there's only one provider that can fix the courts. Now that we're heading right into the beginning of the season, this process takes weeks to complete. We're gonna have no fix really for the courts for the season, other than potentially like a small patch repair that kind of won't really solve the issue of, they're gonna patch where it is now, and then it's gonna chip in another spot right after. That kind of this cycle that we're kind of stuck in. So I guess the ask is to kind of have some accountability for setting up a maintenance schedule for the courts, maybe a maintenance contract with the right provider to get the courts kind of one shot, cleaned up and get them to a much better state than they are now, and then have ongoing maintenance every season. We spent a lot of time talking about the other country clubs and how they actually have a schedule. They service a certain number of courts each year, and so that's kind of where we need to get to. There's a huge amount of activity there every week from September to March. Every night there's, all 4 courts are filled. Weekends are all filled also. There's probably, if you play in a league, I think there's 8 divisions, there's at least 10 teams in each division, so there's a significant amount of people and traffic that are going through these courts every year. They're very active.
So I know Commissioner Blake, well aware of the issue, we spoke about it at the last POT meeting. The latest update that I have is that Riley Green Mountain is gonna be there on the 31st to do the repair work. And again, I don't know how extensive the damage is at the moment, or how, they're not gonna be resurfacing right now, but I know he did indicate that, that is something that he's looking at for, in the capital budget for next year, potentially replacing those courts.
Yeah, I think they had the budget for the resurfacing kind of done, but now we're just out of time.
Right.
I
understand. And again, my understanding, from the commissioner is that, there's only a limited number of folks that do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Riley Green Mountain is the preferred provider, and,
I think the issue is we didn't kind of get back to them with that we actually wanted to proceed from the proposal that we had here.
I can't speak to that. I don't work in the office, so, Paul has indicated that, he's on the job.
So how do we kind of, I guess, make sure that going forward, we kind of get on a better schedule than just kind of patching last minute, like a week before the season starts, because having it, I guess.
The commissioner's aware of the issue. He understands the concerns that you and a number of the other paddle players have. And, I'm sure he's gonna make sure that, that any required maintenance is done in a timely manner. So, that's all I can tell you.
I would like to pick up on that because I wanted to talk about the tennis bubble, and they're linked obviously. These things are evidence of the lack of accountability on the part of people who work for the village. And I don't think the board of trustees should have to micromanage these things. We have the village administrator, the departments report to him. These are problems that have gone on for years. And complaints are made constantly. I played tennis. The facility, I was very happy to see in the paper the other day, people taking their time to go to a trustees meeting to complain about mushrooms growing on the tennis courts, the dangerous conditions. I play there very often. No water coolers. It could be like an oven in there. It could be freezing. The staff literally never goes into the facility to see what is going on. People report about it. They complain about it constantly. If this was a private operation, these people would be fired, and yet the managers are kept in place year after year with no repercussions. This is a village-wide issue, because the other issue I wanted to raise was about the beautification issue and the clear deterioration in the appearance of the village, the public spaces, the garden beds that the village has maintained for years. With regard to the tennis facility, after the article was in the paper, in which Mr. Blake, who I do not know, I have nothing against the man personally, but when he said that the condition of the courts, the departure of courts was because of the facility itself, the bubble, I was incensed. Perhaps that might be part of the reason, which would indicate that those courts need more TLC than less. But has nothing to do with the condition or the nature of the facility. It has to do with people who are hired to do jobs in this village, not doing them and not being held accountable. The same is with the Parks Department and the maintenance of our public spaces. I was on the Citizens Budget Review Committee years ago, and one of the first things we suggested was trash receptacles in 7S. You talk to any of the businesses there, and they will tell you that 75% of their patrons enter and leave through the parking lot, and most of those buildings now are food-related. Ralph Swazi told me to my face that they had ordered trash receptacles for 7S. They never appeared. I mean, this is so common sense that you put garbage pails in the parking lots where you're serving food that it defies logic. To say, I wrote to Mr. Blake about, and I wrote a letter to the paper about the conditions on Franklin, particularly around 7th Street Leo's, those planting beds are overrun with weeds, and he responded to the beautification committee saying that's the responsibility of those businesses. That would be news to them, because I asked numerous people who have been around for years, who work for the village, do business with the village, the Chamber of Commerce, and they all said that those are the responsibility of the village. So the problem you have is a lot of CYAing on the part of a lot of department heads, a lot of passing the buck, and it's just a systemic problem. And so whether it be platform, whether it be road repair, I live at the corner of Washington and Garden. That road is another one that needs serious repair because it has a lot of through traffic to Country Life Press. They have spent the entire summer patching it. They have probably had 10 guys there, probably putting months' worth of labor to patch the equivalent of 2 houses of the road. The entire road needs to be resurfaced. So I don't know how these decisions are made, but I don't think there's anyone in the village who has not seen a decline in the services provided by many of the village departments. So it's a bigger issue than just repairing courts, resurfacing tennis courts, planting bulbs. There's something systemic about the management of a lot of the departments in the village that really has to be addressed.
I would like to bring up another feature, which is this senior center. This is an absolute disgrace. You can go to any senior center in any of the surrounding towns, and they make this really look like it's a hut or something. And the fact that these floors have been so uneven for such a long time, you are begging for a lawsuit, because people are having a great deal of trouble trying to navigate on these floors that buckle under your feet when you're going up and downhill. I have a walking problem. I have to be extra cautious when I'm walking in here. And it has spread from out there all the way to the back. It's terrible, and it's a disgrace. How you could call this a senior center? Money is allocated to change grass fields to AstroTurf, but you can't even put in a decent senior center for us? I think it's despicable. I'm sorry to be so angry, but this has been going on for just much too long, Mary, and you know it. You all know it. The seniors are the last one on the list for anything that's done in this village. We are 21% of the population of this village, and yet we get the short end of the stick every which way. It's a disgrace.
I can say that I did get an update from Commissioner Blake on the floor. It's unfortunate that it was installed improperly, and I think there's issues with the product. They brought in a third-party engineer to do an evaluation, which is, sounds a little crazy. But if there's remediation from the contractor or from the manufacturer,
That doesn't solve the
I
issue.
understand.
You know, it's always like you're passing the buck. I mean, it's just, there's never a resolution to a problem. It's just put off, well, we're looking into it, we'll get another consultation. I think this town spends more money on people consulting on every problem in the village, from St. Paul's down to this senior center. We spend more money and we get nothing done. I'm sorry, but I've lived here since 1972, and I have seen this village disintegrate in front of my eyes. It's a disgrace what it looks like now. What was considered a town with beautiful trees and grass, like this lady says, nothing is taken care of. We had more beautification when the town was taking care of it. Concal is the company, I believe, that takes care of everything. They do a lousy job, and I'm sure they're getting a lot of money. Before I sold my house, we had a little triangle at the end of my street. The residents were going out and mowing the lawn and planting the flowers. Concal didn't do it. I mean, I think this has to be looked into a little bit further than has been done in the past. And I'm sorry to be so angry, but I can't help it. I feel that too much has been neglected for too long.
Well, we certainly appreciate your feedback. I mean, you certainly, you know, have
Legitimate right?
legitimate.
Yes, I think so.
Yes, and, you know, I would never minimize it. You know, again, you know, we'll do what we can do.
One,
You know,
yeah, one thing I just put
It's a
some
lot
of
of issues.
my cards here, like when we came to one of the meetings, I walked in and saw the big bump in the floors, and I didn't know about it till I came to the meeting. So, just, not that this is the long-term
It
solution,
goes
but
all the way back
if
to
you,
the kitchen.
when you see something and you send an email, emails are always good because it's documented, you've made your complaint, and copy me on the email, because then I'm aware and I can, you know, kind of follow up and make sure things get resolved. Or, you know, one of the other trustees, but that would be just one, if you feel like things aren't being responded to, just put me on as a CC.
No, I thought the flooring issue had been resolved. I mean,
No,
a couple of meetings ago, all said, yeah, we, you know, we went to the manufacturer, and, you know, they made a repair and everything's great.
No,
Now,
it's not resolved,
yeah,
definitely not
yeah.
resolved.
Well, they just
Take
put
a card
two
and
long
copy.
sticks. It's two long sticks for
There's a
each
threshold.
and now it's starting to come up again. So you just walk in
Yeah.
and wave.
Yeah,
It's really
that's-
dangerous.
You know, the thing is, there's eventually gonna be a lawsuit.
Right.
It really is, because somebody's gonna fall and really get hurt. And I think it's gonna cost more money in lawsuits than it is to fix the problem.
Thanks for bringing it to our attention, and you, going forward, just copy us on those emails.
Yeah, we hear you loud
You
and
don't have to copy
clear.
all of us, one of us.
We hear you loud and clear on that, and we certainly have to look at
We can't help it.
That's fine, no, we appreciate that. And we definitely have to look at Comcast for the kids and review that whole contract.
Here's the difficulty. And the difficulty is called head count. It's a magic term. The head count means how many employees do you have to do a particular task. And every time we have a budget session, there is a reluctance to increase the head count. Meaning, the more employees you have, the higher the head count, the more dollars. At some point in time, and the reason why I speak from experience is I was a trustee back in 97 to 2001. During that period of time, there was a different opinion that was operated by the trustees, and a lot of the tasks were done internally by Village of Blue Hills. At some point in time, there was a decision to change from village employees to excess out those tasks to somebody else, and there was a dramatic reduction. You cannot put a quart into a pint jar. And that basically means that you have to have the right number of employees to do the task. So, yes, there has,
Can I respond to
Th-
that?
th- this- If I can go on that.
so.
There was a decision made a few years ago that because of the expense of having village employees, and the flowers and everything, and with it, the village employee has medical benefits, pension, and so forth. And maybe that was the decision that, let's try to do it with a private contractor. But obviously, it's not working. So we have to look at that, possibly get a private contractor that can at least get what we have had in the past. Because that was, I guess, the thing. We didn't make that decision, but I guess that was the thing.
Well, one thing they're doing is they put in beautiful bulbs, the tulips and other bulb flowers, and then instead of taking them out, they discard them. Those bulbs are good for year after year, so they're double billing us for everything. They take the bulbs and throw them out, and next year they come and they claim they're brand new bulbs.
I'm not sure Concom does the bulk.
Did
The village is doing the bulbs? Well, they're throwing them out. They're not keeping them
Yeah,
because
actually,
I asked
I
them.
thought they were getting.
Because I said, I will take the
They give them
bulbs.
away.
We posted them, I don't know how many people
They
came.
put them
said,
in.
"Oh,
I heard
yeah."
that they were
You
available
don't-
to the senior, I heard they were made available to the residents, either on Facebook or in
Yeah.
one of the small buildings on St. Paul's.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to follow up. I was on the budget committee when that board made the decision to start outsourcing things. However, we no longer have a paid fire department. We're saving millions of dollars there. We have reduced staff to the level where departments can't function properly. Where our taxes keep going up, I would think our tax base is pretty solid. We have a lot of $2 million houses now. I would think that's increasing tax revenue. So you have to ask, where is all the money going? And if one contractor, if a Conkel can't do the job, I think there's gotta be others that can do the job if they are held accountable and they're told exactly what is expected of them.
We're gonna look to do that.
Right, that's the point that we have not had a tax increase in the past 2 years.
Brute, can I
Oh,
follow up on that?
I want one.
It always goes up to.
So in a period of 4% inflation, you've been flat for 2 years.
Right.
So in effect, we cut our budget 8%
Yeah, so
in real terms. So when trustee Torino talks about headcount, it's really about dollars. We've cut the budget, and you guys need to have an honest conversation with the village. If you want it to be someplace special, taxes are gonna have to go up. They can't be flat during a period of inflation, or you can keep it flat and look like every other town. But we drive through the North Shore, there's 20 towns that look better than Garden City. So I know everybody goes, oh, my taxes are going up. You guys are keeping them flat. In a period of inflation, so we have less buying power, and the result is, as Mrs. Ryan says, Mrs. Ryan says, the village looks like crap.
We're gonna have to make that decision.
And that's a conversation you need to have with the residents,
Yes, well, we're hearing it.
Right,
in a larger, broader sense.
any other questions?
Just a comment, possibly if you do change the condo or hotel, can you, separate the 4 sections of the village and have one, gardening person, or company work on each district? And maybe there'll be a little bit of competition between them, to see who's the best. It always seems to work in other, plans, so.
I just want to mention one thing, Linda, we communicate
Oh.
on email, but we necessarily should have NGC news. I think the issue is we blame things, we blame Conkel, we blame the fact we have less people. But we know we have a problem, and so someone's got to address the problem. And like Bob said, we should have probably, and Don said as well, we should have raised taxes the last couple of years because we have a problem and we have to beautify the village. And I think one of the trustees should be accountable for it, because our administration is not accountable. They keep passing the buck and making excuses Just like Charlie Kelly took over traffic, wanted to use 7, have to take on the beautification of the village and make it your goal to make it better. Because we have a big problem. This is not the Garden City I came into 25 years ago.
Actually, let me just follow up, because he's not here tonight, but we have heard you, we've been thinking about it. Ed Finneran is working on this. He's kind of been tasked with, I know he's met with Patty Seiler, beautification, and they're talking about, what we can do to address on a large scale. So you heard, thank you for coming and saying it again tonight.
But even with no tax increase, what's our current cash balance? Is it about $20 million is my best guess, available funds? When can I find out? I've been asking for the May 31st financials for a while now. Do we have preliminary financials yet?
No, we don't.
Why?
They don't issue preliminary financials.
Why?
We'll get the order.
I want to December to see what the village balance sheet looks like.
I think September.
I think that's ridiculous. Big companies get figured out in 30 days. We're a village, we're a $56 million budget. You take preliminary numbers out?
No company does it.
All right, we hear.
No, we don't issue preliminary numbers.
Have you seen a preliminary number yourself?
I have not.
Why haven't you asked for one? You're the financial officer.
The audit
You're
is-
like Irene, we're on you.
The audit is still in process.
I don't need an audit to see my cash balance, Mike.
You're correct.
All right, do we have any other questions before, I know there's some here in St. Paul's, yes.
Obviously, seem like a minor question considering all of the major things that we've just been hearing. First, I want to compliment the trustees and whoever is responsible for the series of concerts that we had this summer. They were excellent, they were attended, they were much enjoyed. However, many of the people who attended these concerts are older people, we all go to the bathroom, as one of the commercials on TV says, let's all say, we all know, we all pee. But we have people who are coming to concerts who have to leave early because they have to use facilities. There are no bathroom facilities available to anybody who attends the concerts. I've spoken to Mr. Blake. We talked about the possibility of porta potties being brought in. He explained the reason why that would be less feasible, because of when they get delivered, when they get picked up, and they would be there for a period of time unsupervised over weekends when other people could come in and use them. And we know what the problem that exists in our environment, that could cause problems. The village hall does have toilet facilities. There's nobody there to open the village hall, but perhaps, again, it would cost money to have somebody assigned to be there. It's not around, right next to the gazebo, but it's close enough, perhaps, for some people to be able to have that facility. It seems like a decent thing to have available to the people who attend concerts. The same thing might happen for the promenade, and we haven't brought that up yet, but there are, no promenade?
No.
Not for this year,
No.
but if we will have it next year, or that will be decided next.
We discussed it, yeah.
No, not yet.
But whenever we have gatherings of people, we have to provide for their comfort. And I don't think that that's something we can do. This will then go down about refuse, having refuse. You know that my issue is always lighting. Your parking lot is not lit well enough. We were leaving the promenade 2 weeks ago, there's a large congregation of young people near Rosalind Savings Bank in that alley, that area. And they were beginning to act up. And I followed the car in front of me, who did stop and tell the police so that they were able to come and stop whatever anything was brewing. Nothing had started, but it was brewing. So we need some more lighting, and we need more police presence. Perhaps we need police on carts who are more mobile and more available for the young people to see them. I think that the idea of having a promenade is wonderful, it provides community. There are problems. I was a school principal with 1,400 kids. I figured out how to make it happen. With 1,400 little ones in one building, we can do it here too. It's like people. You don't give up the baby for the baby. Don't throw away something that can work and is good. Fix it. And I think that everything I've heard so far is, let's fix, we know there's a problem, there's a need, but bright enough people to be able to fix it. Thank you for your work, and I appreciate the concept, as I said.
Thank you.
Mary, I'd like to give you a compliment on taking care of the problem around the old Bloomingdale's building that was so bad. And when it was brought up at another meeting, I see that there was action taken as far as trying to clean it up a little bit. It was a disgrace how all the trash, and then they had taken down the screening off of the fencing. But it looks a little bit better. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions on other topics other than before we get to St. Paul's, which I know is what you're talking about? Yes.
Hi, let's stand up. My name is Allison DeGroote, lifelong resident, and I reside at 2227 7th Street. I'm the president of the board, and recently they removed all the parking spots from behind the building. So anyway, I've lived there my entire life. I've lived in Garden City my entire life, and we all pay taxes. We don't own bladed grass. We're in a constant battle for parking. And a lot of people in my building who have lived there for long term, you know, we pay a good dollar to the village. We put up with the promenades, thank God they're canceled. We put up with a lot in that corner of the world. But now we have nowhere to park. We're being told to go behind the tracks, which is dangerous. You know, unlike a lot of people here, we don't get to go to our quiet streets and our homes and shut the door and have a quiet evening. Like, we're living right in the middle of it. And I've lived there for how many years now? I don't know, 20 years? And there's no parking. And I have some women who have recently retired and their cars are getting ticketed round the clock. We need to do something. And they're even looking, you know, they're okay if, oh, hello, friend.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
I brought it up.
Good girl.
You brought it up an hour ago.
Well, some of us are at work in the city. I just got off the train. But we're willing, you know, I talked to Susan, and people are willing to even pay a fee for a sticker if need be. So.
Mike Sullivan's gonna get it on the traffic agenda at the next meeting.
Great, if you need my name and contact information, let me know and I'm happy to give it. Or you can take Pat's.
I mentioned also it's good to come to, if there's an issue that's important to you, come to the traffic commission meeting. They move very quickly because they have big agendas, but when something comes up, it's good to have, you know, to be in the room to make sure they hear you.
Yeah, and well, now they know that Pat and maybe Susan can come. Unfortunately, I do travel an awful lot for work, but good to know and happy to be kept abreast of everything. So thank you for your time. And good work. I live in this village for my whole life for a reason.
May I ask one last question?
Sure.
Is there an ordinance about noise from cars?
Wish there was.
So noise, we're actually, the EAB is going to address noise in one of their
I
sections.
know there
in
are some areas,
Parkways.
because I tell you, they drag up and down Cherry Valley Avenue. You can't sit on your patio at Wyndham because of the noise from the cars. I mean, they go from Stewart Avenue, they drag all the way up to the next corner to make a right, to go around Wyndham, to come back, to go to Stewart Avenue. It's terrible. In the summertime, you can't be outside.
Watch, there's gonna be an I think EAB will be addressing this. We've been provided with information, you know, we're following what other communities are thinking of doing with these cameras. They're like a sensor that will ticket automatically, but there are some problems with them because the folks that have those mufflers often also have something over their license plate that makes it hard to read. So we're looking into that, researching to see if there's anything we can do here in the village to help with that situation, because we know it's a problem.
It's all over, it's
Yeah.
all over the village. And the motorcyclists.
I don't know about the motorcycles.
Yeah, I do.
The cars are really bad, Cherry Valley, coming down Stewart and going around the Wyndham.
Yeah, I noticed on Seventh, I was eating outside on Seventh Street and it was like,
You
yeah,
can't
couldn't
even
hear.
have a conversation when you go to the bakery.
Yeah.
French bakery.
We're looking into see, you know, what we can do to address that.
is Franklin Avenue, as it goes through Seventh Street in center of town, is that a village road or is that a county road?
That's county.
It's county, so you don't have jurisdiction to put cameras there. Because it seems to me that, and I think it's already happened, that why would you wanna sit any place outside on Franklin Avenue zooming down?
What type of cameras are you referring to?
You can't put a camera. What I'm saying is, does the village have, do they have jurisdiction over Franklin Avenue so that
No,
they
no, no,
can
tell
make
me,
a
what
decision?
type of cameras are you
Oh,
referring to?
speed cameras.
That's a whole other issue that the
That's
traffic
the reason
commission.
why I asked that. That is, speed cameras, red light cameras, are only the purview of the state. So, when we used to have, by the high school, a speed camera or a red light camera, that was a specific law that was enacted, and it was unenacted because they caught too many people.
Because they went, I'm
They
sorry.
caught too many people.
Well, I'm just saying, the town's overlooking a good source of revenue because the speed doesn't go on the village.
The county has a certain number of speed cameras and red light cameras that they are allowed to allocate.
Can the village speak to was it New York State DOT, is that who we have to speak to?
The county is the one who
Is the
has
county,
the jurisdiction.
not the state?
Actually, I'm hoping Charlie Kelly will be at the next meeting, because he could speak to you a lot on this. Action is being taken by the traffic commission to do whatever we can to get
It seems
cameras, but,
almost dangerous.
Oh, it is dangerous.
so. It's probably one of the, yeah, I don't wanna speak and not get it quite right, but it's on their agenda, and they're working on everything we can do on traffic, including cameras.
60 miles an hour is average on Franklin Avenue. Speedway.
It's a highway.
Yeah, yes, 60 is the average.
You said 60?
Seems that way, I'm not sure. It's like that,
My condo is exactly on the corner of 7th and Franklin. It's horrific.
Well,
I'd like to
the reason
thank
why I
you for
mentioned
the,
60 is a little
drive that's
high,
on.
because the lights are
Oh.
not sequenced, that you can go that fast.
They don't pay attention to it, but it helps,
The
it
same as
helps.
Troy, looking out there. It's a speedway.
I can tell you because I go from my house on Main Street to my office every morning. And I specifically try to go 30 miles an hour. I do get passed, but nobody goes past me at 60, 50 or 60 miles an hour. Because the lights are sequenced that you really can't do that. But it does feel like it's a runway.
I think that's why they come around the corner from Stewart and try to get up to, what is that, 9th Street, to make the right turn to come around. They're going very fast, because they're trying to make the turn up from Stewart onto Cherry Valley to hit the next green light to make the corner.
But when you go from Cherry Valley, make a right, and you go on 9th Street, and then you go to Hilton and make the 9th, there's both a light there, and then you have to make the right. And the problem with that specific area is depending on the volume of the cars, they will back up at the light on Stewart and Hilton for those people that are making.
They do every night, I watch them. And then the people can't go straight on Cherry Valley because they're all blocked off from the people trying to make a left onto Cherry Valley.
I think the village needs to pass a law that you're only allowed to have one car per household.
Or no left turns anywhere.
This week has been parking all the way along Hilton, between Ninth and Stewart. Parking on the right side. So if you're not making a left turn, you do have one lane of traffic. Solid parking all the way along.
Going north or south?
North. North side.
Going north on Hilton, you actually have 2 lanes of traffic. The lane on the left is a left-hand turn.
Oh, this is heading south, I'm sorry.
Heading south, there's still 2 lanes. You have one that approaches the light to make a left, and the other one is to go straight down to Seventh.
Yes.
Can I ask the St. Paul's question?
Oh,
We're gonna get to that, or?
Yeah, you know what, I said at the beginning, because we know it's always a long conversation, so I was just gonna let people ask their other questions, then we're gonna get to St. Paul's. They're not St. Paul's, yep.
This is a short question.
Thanks, Paul.
The new lantern bulbs that they
Yes.
tell us to step on them whenever, well, sitting at the bakery, they're all in those bushes. I went to talk to the manager. He said the village knows. And I had all on my body, I had a white shirt on, and they were all over. I mean, it's getting to the point where you're being attacked by them. They're all over. And this morning going out to, I live in Hall, and 7N, they're all over a post. I wasn't going to start, get my shoe going up the post to kill them, but they're awful. They're around a lot in the area here.
I was, I've heard that, and I did ask Paul Blake, and I'll follow up for all we've given really so far is the advice to squish them, but if we can get something more.
And the manager knows at the bakery that they're all over his bushes, all around the perimeter there.
Yeah.
And they come flying out, they land right on you or on the table. So it's getting, I don't know, I think it's getting out of hand.
St. Paul's.
Okay, back
So what's the status of the firehouse, Western Firehouse?
We're still waiting for some figures from the architect engineers. They're supposed to give us some final figures on
Is there some kind of
I've been asking our building superintendent back for the last 3 weeks, so I will ask him again tomorrow.
My one other question for the night, the status of the FEMA claim on the St. Paul's roof?
No.
The status is quo.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, then my question, how will it appear on year-end financials? I'll ask that question by the way. As a
Well,
receivable or
right
an
now, it's
expense?
not gonna appear anywhere, because it hasn't been acted upon.
No.
You paid the bill, didn't we?
Have to pay the bill,
You paid the bill.
have to pay the bill.
How's it being recorded?
You have to ask Irene Wu. I'm not on that committee. Thank you.
If we have one more quick question, and then we'll get.
Yeah, real quick question. I sent a letter to Paul Blake for CC'd him. I sent it to trustees with some members of the swim team signed to get the blocks used at the Garden City Pool. Thank you for being responsive, Trustee Sullivan and Trustee Torino. Paul Blake was responsive. He gave me some information on the reasons why and the standard depth of the pool that's necessary for New York State. I followed up with New York State. He said he was going to follow up with New York State. There's an opportunity to ask for a waiver from the local issuing. I guess Nassau County is the agency that issues the operating permit. So I've sent him a note today asking that he consider requesting a waiver to use the blocks in the pool that's anywhere between 6'6" and 5 feet, which by standards of USA Swimming, National Federation of High Schools, several others, it's all within their standards. And there are other pools in Nassau County and Suffolk County that utilize those blocks in depths less than 6 feet. So the New York State Department of Health told me there's a process to get a waiver, and so that's really the request, and I'll be following up with Mr. Blake. He's been responsive, so there's no complaints. I just want to try to be a bug in your ears. Thank you.
Thank you.
For 15 years, I used the blocks when they were lower, but somebody decided to make more water there. I don't know why.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks.
Can I just ask one minor question?
I think we need to get this,
Yeah, people did come.
we need to get this thing
All right,
on
this
St.
is
Paul.
a fast question. What's happening with the PFAS claims in terms of the settlement with Florida with 3M Corporation?
I'll have to check with, head of council here, so shoot an email. That's the type of thing that's good. All right, so on to St. Paul's. You know what I thought before, over there, I know lots of questions as far as, the ballot. We have ballot language. I was going to get it on the website today because I know people are asking, and the village clerk put a draft. I wanted it to have the watermark draft, so no one printed it out and said, this is the ballot. And the draft came off when she sent it, so it should be up by the end of the day tomorrow for those who are anxious to know what's on, what type of language will be on the ballot. It of course could, as I think most know, we engaged Western to get clarification, and nice executive summary. We want everything going out to be clear to residents so everyone understands what the numbers correlate to. And you'll see the ballot language, and, you know, of course, there's a chance it could be tinkered with if the question comes back and says, you know, something that causes us to do that, but you'll get an idea of what this opinion poll is about. And just to give a little more background, I'm gonna just read you what I went out with, because it was trying to answer questions and may answer some of the questions you came here with. If not, we'll get to the questions. And this is what I wrote for the week. Since the beginning of my term as mayor, I've been focusing on work with the Board of Trustees to move towards a decision on the St. Paul's main building. While opinions vary on what that decision should be, the sentiment is widespread and uniform that it is time for a decision. The importance of gauging community support cannot be underestimated, and I refer everyone to the long 30-year history of the village in St. Paul's, and you'll see the importance of gauging community support. I would like to be clear as to the goal of the opinion poll, so residents understand the rationale behind the ballot language we'll be sharing and the importance of their participation. The goal of the opinion poll is to inform the Board of Trustees whether a majority of residents support committing significant work by the Board of Trustees, village staff, village volunteers, and along with additional expenditures for the expert advice needed to save part or all of the St. Paul's main building. And while we only have preliminary cost estimates at this time for alternate proposals to save parts of St. Paul's, we believe it is enough information for the board to share with residents now to determine what community support there is for these continuing efforts to save a historic building or part of a historic building. In addition to sharing pricing from the cost estimator, we will also be providing residents with details of how a project at St. Paul's would be financed so that everyone understands with details, so everyone understands how these expenditures would impact their village tax bill. Okay, so while some may likely criticize the completeness of the numbers we have after the work of Mayor Veneziali's St. Paul's Committee, we feel that the information we'll be presenting to you before the opinion poll is enough information to gauge resident support for continued efforts to develop a plan and to get firm numbers on a project that could be supported by residents and funded by a bond resolution. The St. Paul's main building is part of the village history. If you haven't been to the new webpage on St. Paul's, visit it. Stuff is being added. I'd like to have everything by end of the summer, so by Labor Day, everything up there. If you look and you say, you know, you think something's missing, reach out to me and let me know what you think is missing, or put it in one of the question boxes we'll put around town. And the history of the building is, you know, on that page. I hope this helps to clarify the reason for the October public opinion poll and the importance of your participation. So that's just a little background for y'all, and the language, as far as the language, that should be up tomorrow. So I'll open it up to questions. Yes.
Good evening. John Patoni, 31 Locust Street. I made a presentation at the last board meeting, as you may recall, and I had suggested having a referendum along with the village election in March. Mr. Serino suggested maybe having it in November. The resolution was asked for October. That is what it is. The problem that I have, and a number of other people have, is that the mayor's committee spent thousands of dollars. They spent a year and a half telling us why we need to redo the whole thing without any cost. It's like having a debate between you and Mr. Serino, with Mr. Serino not having a chance to say it. But the point is, the point is, for 18 months, the committees were advertising and all the rest of the stuff, the thousands of dollars that they spent, the time that they spent. But I don't know of anybody, any part of the committee, who ever talked about the costs. The question of cost hasn't been debated. It's like a candidate gets up on stage and has an hour and a half of time, and at the end, Mr. Torino has had 2 minutes to give his say. If we were in the 3rd grade, it would be, it's not fair. It really isn't fair. There hasn't been a debate with regard to costs. Now, I have talked to a number of people, including people who are on the mayor's committee, and when you add up all of the costs, and let's assume there's a bond issue for 20 years, and you talk about all the improvements that have to be made, the number that I heard was $100 million. $100 million. Now, if you divide that by the number of households, which I believe is 6,200, it comes out to $16,000 on your taxes. $16,000 on your taxes. I mean, that's gonna drive a lot of people crazy, like me. But I already pay over $20,000 in taxes. I don't want to pay another $16,000. And on top of that, I can't get from the village what it has cost us over 30 years to maintain this place. I have called village officials, I even called Karen as recently as this afternoon. She didn't know. What I'm saying is, there has to be some kind of a presentation with regard to cost, and a fair presentation. And the people that I've talked to, bottom line, $100 million. And I think that's the number that should be debated. Thank you.
Just 2 things to share. One thing as far as the 6 months, and I've heard that, like, why, what's the rush? And it may have been last week in the mayor's column, I put out, I shared the quote from the Westerman report, time is not on our side. In the next 2 or 3 years, the building could begin to collapse. I don't want that under my watch. I don't want that when we're trying to make a decision on what to do with the building. 6 months is a half a year. So to delay this 6 months for no reason, there was nothing that could happen in the 6 months that can't happen between now and October, I think would be the wrong thing to do. And the other thing to point out is once this opinion poll occurs, it's not like there's going to be any action. There are steps ahead. So there's a time frame beyond the opinion poll that we have to consider. And time is of the essence. The other issue, as far as the debate on the numbers, I don't know that numbers are personal. What does that mean to you when it's, that dollar amount may be different to different people? I don't know that we need a public debate. We need to know what the numbers are as clearly as we can deliver them, what the financing would be, and everyone will take that in and they'll go in and they'll express their opinion on it. We do not have, which you probably know if you've been looking at the Westerman report, we have pricing on the different options that you'll have. So I don't know where that one particular number came from, but you'll get the price.
It came from a number of people, both on and off the committee. And the point that I'd also like to raise is that I think sometimes you people talk about everybody looking at the village website. That's not the case. There are a lot of people who've never looked at the village website. And there's a certain point of communications, and the question with regard to costs and communications. Don't just simply say, it's on our website.
I agree with you. Actually, to that point, there will be a mailing, there'll be 2 presentations. We're going to start.
But again, it goes back to my point about the debate. You've been arguing this point with regard to the preservationists for 1.5 years. And you have then 6 weeks to make a point with regard to the costs. Again, going back to the 3rd grade, it's not fair.
All right, so thank you. But we will, just to reassure everyone, we have, plans for 2 different presentations. It will likely be maybe the 3rd week in September we're looking at for the finance presentation, which will include bond counsel, the financial advisors. Mike is organizing that for us. And then there'll be another one, perhaps the 1st week in August, where we'll have Lloyd Westerman and
October.
I'm sorry, 1st week in October, where we'll have the other information, legal and building information. Yes.
Trustee Sullivan, are you comfortable that adaptive reuse can be financed 30 years?
I think the financing options, they're, I can't sit here today and say, yes, for sure it can happen, because, you know, there's uncertainty in any of the financing options outside of the local, any of the financing options that don't fall under,
Municipal law.
municipal law, yeah. So 15-year for
It's the local finance
a
law.
local finance law, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So, going outside of that, whether you go to the legislature or try to fund through a conduit, there's uncertainty around it. And I think until you have a set of plans and get them approved, you know, you can't say definitively that, it can be done.
But the group did. They put 30 years on their financing, so
I was not part of that group, so I can't speak for it.
apologize.
I was part of that group. I'm comfortable with 30 years for that.
So,
Brian, were you looking outside of what we were talking about? Possibly
We're
gas?
talking 30 years of for the readaptive use plan. It was through a conduit issuer, which is very common for projects like that throughout the country, even throughout Nassau County. I think the Oceanside Library, I forget who they did it through, but they issued 30-year bonds to redo their library.
They did it through DASNY. That's what I was gonna ask.
So I'd be comfortable with that. Of course, you'd have to get bond counsel. I wouldn't put up for a vote for a bond vote without getting bond counsel, but in my line of business for 20 years, I've seen that done throughout the county, throughout the state, throughout Long Island, and, throughout the country.
Well, we
Is-
haven't talking about
Is there a difference,
Wait till
Mike,
we
between
have a
critical and
presentation.
non-critical financing?
Well,
Because the library is considered critical.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, let me just say, I'm not a municipal finance expert. So, you know, I'm kind of, but I'm relying on capital markets advisors and bond counsel who are the experts. You know, we've gotten a variety of guidance. You know, Trustee Torino is on the committee as well, the finance committee. You know, guidance that we've gotten is, you know, if you want to finance, you know, through DASNY, for instance, that the building's got to be appraised for the bond amount that you want. So in this case, if it was 50 million, the building would have to appraise for 50 million, you know.
Before the work or after the work?
Before the work.
Well, that's a no.
Because
That's
it's,
a no-no.
because it's, you know, would be a secured financing. But again, that's not coming from me, that's coming from our advisors. So,
Thank you.
we will cover all that in the presentation. You know, third week of September. You know, there are alternatives that we can try to appeal to the legislation, change the law, and have, you know, have the proper use for the building changed in 30 years. You know, and make your case that. It takes time.
But it's
And-
outside
and-
outside standard methods.
outside local finance law, and there's uncertainty with that as well. So-
Well, it sounds like you've already reached a decision that's outside of the local finance law.
actually,
However,
Well,
get-
well,
let me just, one thing I should have said from the get-go is, this is a meet and greet for us to hear questions, answers we know we can share. It's not a board meeting, there are no decisions being made here, so I think we probably should steer, there will be a presentation with the experts. I think we should stay away from this topic and.
Can I ask you a question?
move
Why
on
can
to-
some people go back and forth and other people can't? Seems to be two sets of rules in the room. One
Well,
person is
saying
allowed
is
to
that-
comment to other people, back and forth to the board, other residents, and then one person can only say one thing and there's no dialogue. It just seems like there's two sets of rules in this room, and actually happened at a board meeting as well. And I find it disturbing as a resident, that some residents seem to have more rights than others in front of this board and this mayor.
Did you say everything you wanted to say? 'Cause
No,
I'm
I
not-
didn't,
if you
but,
feel
but
like
I don't
you're-
feel like, I don't feel like being,
It's
I,
this, that
excuse
we
me, I don't,
shouldn't be
okay, I guess I
discussing.
can.
It's us.
No,
You can speak.
You can comment.
You can
Brian,
say
so
whatever you
comment.
want.
I can't, I just keep getting interrupted, and then it's a back and forth with another
Well, you're
resident.
not, so go ahead, we won't interrupt.
I just wanna say, for the record, why do some residents get to just shout out at other people as they're talking and interject when I'm talking to you? That's all I'm saying. It seems to be two sets of rules. It's happened at another board meeting where the same person was screaming over Zoom at various residents in the room, and nobody did anything. But when I tried to give an answer to the trustee who asked a question at that meeting, I got shouted down and was told I couldn't talk. Two sets of rules for different residents, is all I'm saying, is what it seems like under this mayor and board.
No,
That's the only
But
line.
let's-
that's-
Yeah, let's
that's-
have your say. I'm not gonna,
No, that's.
if you, anything else to
That's
say, I don't want you to
ridiculous,
feel
Brian.
like you're cut off.
That is my step.
You're, okay.
Yes.
In this survey, could you also put, question whether, we might have a statue or some type of beach plaque, just to remember that we did have St. Paul's here,
Meaning if it's taken down?
if it's taken down, yes, could we have some kind of a plaque or something, for all those who wish to remember it and feel that history will forget it, then we'll have something and we can pick that one off.
As I understand it, you're gonna have a bifurcated vote, demolition or adaptive reuse. If you wanna, there's no check off the boxes on the bottom saying, let's have a statue or let's have something else. Part of the difficulty is this is a preliminary vote because whatever option is selected upon, there are years of work that will have to go in before anything is done.
Well, then what is the purpose of this survey if the town decides to keep it or not keep it or fix part of it? And then we're going to have years more of discussion on this, this building that is falling down before our eyes, has this ugly fence around it now. There's certainly nothing beautiful about St. Paul's anymore. It is a horror.
So let me just, as far as the, you know, what I was trying to, and it's not, it's a very complex issue. It's an emotional issue.
Sure.
And yet we have to try and keep it simple, and
Right.
that's what we've been struggling, and it's not gonna, we can't hear everything at one time that we need to know for, you know, we're looking basically for a steer. There are many different options, whatever route we go, you know, like what's gonna happen on the property, what's gonna happen with the building, the part of the building. So the idea is just to steer us, to hear from residents. We know this much information. So it had to be, we felt that it should be 2, because 3 we know is problematic, and then there's no real winner. So the way we are going out is we're stacking everything against demolition, which I'm comfortable with because demolition is demolition. So it's going to be, and we also don't really have enough information now, solid enough numbers to say, community, you know, it's gonna be this at the end, it's gonna cost this much, finished, you know, like it's very preliminary what we have, and we need to spend more money to get more definite numbers. So, and we need to do more work, as a board and as a community. So it's basically a steer, but it's still important. And it's to gauge the support for continuing on in efforts to, preserve the part of all the buildings. And but then
Keep or
to,
preserve the building.
yeah, to the park idea,
I
I think.
understand that, but didn't we have a survey years and years ago?
Yes.
On the determination of what will happen to St. Paul's?
Yes.
And I believe that the village, you know, population thought that maybe we should get rid of it, at that time.
It was
And
voted,
again,
it was voted to take it down.
right, and then, again, nothing happens. Surveys are fine if we follow through on surveys.
Was there two, I didn't mean to interrupt you, was there 2 options on that survey?
You know what, so long ago, that I don't remember.
Here's what, yeah.
It was a long time.
One of our FAQs that we're going to have on the website, and they should be there by Monday, at least, you know, the ones that we're seeing a lot. One of them is like, what have we voted on before? And you're gonna see a timeline of the votes and polls on the St. Paul's main building. So
And what-
I think I know the one you're talking
Yeah.
about, but then that was followed by a bond resolution for the money to demolish the building, which lost significantly. So here we are, everyone will
Exactly.
understand the history. I think this is the best way we can go out with the information we have, and I think we're going to know more after October 21st than we know now.
Thank you.
Yeah, with the survey that's going on, are you going to have some, I know that it's going to cost a lot of money to, if they decide for adaptive reuse in terms of that section, for the construction of the building or reconstruction, whatever you want to call it. But what about the estimate for the annual operating costs in terms of the number of employees and heating and all of the other stuff, grounds, maintenance, everything that would be required? Will there be some like rough estimate for that? Because that would be an ongoing cost.
That is something Larry Marciano is working on, the O&M. One issue we have is the, what is going to be there. You know, we have these partial plans. It's a pretty modest, usable space. So there will be part of the financial presentation. Mike's gonna get the O&M stuff and make it work on it.
We're gonna try to present a number that includes, the debt service fees, O&M, and then the impact to the taxpayer. That's the goal, and, again, it's just math, so it's not, and we're working with, again, CNA, who was, well versed in this.
Yes.
I went to the meeting that was at the middle school, I guess about a year ago, where they had all these grandiose plans of what they were gonna do. This section was gonna be for children, and there was going to be daycare, and there was going to be, ceramic classes, there was going to be things for seniors, and they had all these wonderful ideas. And the thing is, who's going to pay the salaries for all the people that would be required to work there, for one thing? Second of all, like Richard just brought up, the maintenance on this building is going to be astronomical. And I don't understand the concept of how you can reconstruct floors 1 and 2, and meantime you have the rest of the buildings ready to fall down on the first 2 floors. I don't understand that concept at all.
Can I explain it to you for just 1 second?
Sure.
Okay? In recreation, a number of the programs are by subscription. So part of the difficulty with looking into the future, which is essentially what that presentation was. As I understand it, part of the expense in adaptive reuse is to secure the building, the physical structure. Another part would be to build out some of the internal space. You then have, some of it will be built out, some of it will be what is called white box, and that is depending on the needs. Now, your need is, as you have expressed, for a better senior center. If you and the rest of the seniors decide that more space should be allocated to it, that would be one of the options. So all of this has to go into a methodology by which we work towards it. Merely because you have a vote on 1 or 2 options, there still are statutory requirements that need to be met before any steps are taken. One of which is called SECR, which is environmental. So the board's effort here is to get a better pulse on what the residents are looking for. I take my blood pressure every morning and every night. Is it the same every time? No, it is not. And if I have a pizza that has a lot of salt, I can tell you which way it's going. And if my wife says, why don't you have fish? I don't want fish. I mean, can I have a steak, please? It goes the other direction. So what happens here is you as residents give us as a board a better idea of where you're going to want to go. If you are going on a highway and say, I'm going to take the Long Island Expressway, and then Waze says, there's traffic jams, there's this, there's that, there's everything else, we have to adapt and make changes. Yes. We as a board cannot give you all the information to all the questions. We can give you what information we have, whether the local finance law says 10 years for one option, 15 years for another, or 30 years for another. Those are options that we can't get to yet.
How can you fix the first 2 floors and leave everything above it falling apart, where it's gonna cave down on the first 2 floors after you fix them?
Candidly, I don't believe that statement is anywhere near accurate.
It's missing floors in part of the building. I've seen all of the things on the internet. And now there's obviously kids that have gotten into it because now there's graffiti all over the walls. Have you seen that video?
I took the video.
Oh, you took it.
So,
And one place, there's no floor at all in it, right, Mary?
there have been collapses, but that's part of what the engineers are going to.
I think you'll have to give us some credit that we're not gonna leave the rest of the building with floors collapsing or potentially collapsing, if we're gonna put, kids in it. Part of the concept for adaptive reuse, as I understand it, is to stabilize the whole building.
So there'll be more information going out that you'll be able to dig into, and then when you have a question, either email or put your question in the box, and we're gonna use
Where's the box?
there's one right here, it just came
Oh,
out, we have
yes.
question
On the
boxes,
desk here? Oh.
senior center, library, village hall. And I think a lot of people are gonna be asking the same questions, so rather than having everybody send their emails, the FAQs on the website will be used to answer all the questions. If there are questions that we can't answer off the cuff, we'll get them either in a mail-in or in a presentation.
I have some questions.
Yes.
Just to clarify something, the vote was in 2011, and 2/3 voted to save the building, 2/3 of the residents. If anybody remembers, it was a very confusing vote. Avalon Bay was involved at the time, and I think the vote was meant to confuse, that's my personal opinion. But it was 2/3 to vote for. I believe about 5,500 people voted, but you could look it up. And to, as I call you, Diane Pumpkin's mother, what white boxing is turning the phased, we were talking about a phased approach. And white boxing is bringing the rooms up to code but leaving them alone, kind of like, and then as needs grow in the village, then you fill those needs. And a lot of the programs that during those meetings were existing programs in the village. And again, like Trustee Torino said, a lot of people sign up. I just remember when I was signing up my daughter for things, it was harder to get, harder to get into the recreation department and then to get Beatles tickets. I mean, it was crazy. And I've lived here my whole life, I've been here 60 years, and one thing about the building that I think we have to understand is that it's part of a suite in the National Register of Historic Places. We're one of the first planned communities, and we have a founder, and I think what some people are trying to do is preserve our history. And that's what I was thinking, but at reasonable cost, especially to Mr. Petoni, because, none of us wanted to pay $16,000, a year on our taxes. It was a couple hundred, so. And maybe
2011
Mr. Elise, who's an architect, could, he's been in the building several times, could talk about the shape of the building, because the damaged part is less than 4%, I believe, of the building.
The 2011 vote you talked about, Betsy, that was for Avalon Bay, if we wanted
Demolition.
or mothball.
Yeah, and it was 2/3 and demolition lost.
Everyone, watch for the FAQs, because we're gonna lay out the history of votes and polls, so everyone.
We'll have no questions.
Yes.
Mary, could I? Well, just wait for 1 minute.
I'm Will Louise, I'm sorry, my voice is failing me. I'm a licensed architect resident in Garden City. I've inspected the buildings. A few points. Number one, the damage, those floors that have caved in, it's occurred in 2 points in the building, directly below roof leakages. The roofs were damaged there, they've since been repaired, but at the time, water was gushing through. I don't know for how many years it was going through, but eventually, the bottom floors came out, and it occurs on 2 points. The structure of the building, we've had structural engineers look at it, this isn't just me. structure is sound. It is sound. It's not going anywhere. It's based on masonry construction, thick brick walls on the exterior and then in the corridors. And then running perpendicular to the corridors are partitions that create different rooms. Those partitions can be demolished, rebuilt, and they're up for grabs. The corridor walls have to stay because that's part of these technologies. So that's not going to change no matter what happens. As far as this board is concerned, I think it makes sense. I'm very, very troubled by the timing. There's too many unanswered questions at this point. And to do it, to rush it at this point, I think maybe well-intentioned, but it's a great mistake. And you should really give this decision, as you say, it's very emotional, it's very involved. It affects our taxes, it affects everything that this village needs to us. This isn't just a regular sort of history, is it? This isn't history, this is heritage. So you're commenting, should we have a plaque or something? We can have a plaque or something, but we could also have the building. I'm not saying the thing to do is have the building.
And I agree with you. You are the first person who has described the architecture of this building. I thought that the walls were less, stable than they are. Nobody has ever mentioned any of these facts before on the construction. And I think that that's something that we should all know.
And that's what I mean in informing everyone before the vote. They have to take this into consideration, just like they have to take into consideration the cost and decide if it's worth $60,000 or whatever we suggested. I don't know. One other thing I'd just like to object to, because I've heard it a few times. I was in that mayor's volunteer committee that has been resolved. All my work, I did all those plans that were on display. None of that was paid. I may be an idiot, but I did it for free. All right? So I really, with all due respect, I take exception to the claim that we spend money on that. No. We did spend money on Western, on getting them reported, but no.
Yes.
I would just like to clarify a little bit of history. And this lady back here talked about the prior referendum. The prior referendum had three issues in it. One was Avalon Bay, one was preservation, and one was demolition. Avalon Bay, and you can check with the Garden City News, you can check with all. Avalon Bay came in with like 21%. The preservations came in with 30%. The demolition came in with 48%. So the plurality was clearly for demolition. And I beg you to
Actually,
go back.
I had someone fact check it before I mentioned it, so.
But I think
So I just
the
wanted to
issue though
bring that
is,
point.
when we had a vote for the bond to knock it down,
Right, that's.
70% of people said, no, I don't want to knock it down.
Yes,
So
the
we're
bond.
dysfunctional. When we finally had the decision to knock it down and actually raise the bond, we said, no, we don't want to do it, and the thing lost.
Don't be kidding.
So I hope we get a lot of information. I thought we'd have more financial information by next, like the option, the opinion poll or whatever, but based on what I'm hearing tonight, it looks like it's gonna be a little soft. Is this really opinion poll, just like a directional poll, or, I get, starting to get the feeling that it's not really deciding the fate of St. Paul's, it's kind of like just giving us some data points, because this is gonna be a long journey of secret, environmental studies, and whether we can afford to do the bonding, that type of thing. How would you describe this opinion poll?
So, just to be clear, this is gonna be one of the FAQs. We are not calling it a vote or a referendum, we're calling it opinion poll because, we can't see our decision making. So, at the end of the day, we wanna hear your opinion, but the decision needs to be made by the Board of Trustees.
One thing I would like to give you some advice about, I did 2 websites recently, the Say No to the Casino website and the Estates BOA website. I know you guys love the BOA website, but websites are important. It's hard to drive traffic to websites, and I hope you do start to drive traffic as we get closer to the opinion poll.
right now you go to our website, and you made a lot of progress, but you put, there's a lot of data out there, but there's not a lot of information. It's really hard to figure out what to look at. You have 4 drone videos. You have the hockey ring proposal that was proposed 40 years ago. You have a secret study done in 2011. I think if you're going to drive people to the website, you have to have just some core information that they need. Maybe it's the drawings of the 3 options. Maybe it's the financial information. But to go to a website now, you see a laundry list of information. And I think it's a lost opportunity as people start to go to the website after Labor Day. It's confusing right now. It's really hard to figure out what am I supposed to look at the documentation on the website. There's just too much out there. We should take all the old documentation and just call it legacy documentation. Say, if you want to go through this, do it at your leisure, but you have to drive people to what they need to look at. You have a very short period of time. So that's my #1 recommendation.
Part of the difficulty is the documentation that you're looking to see has not been developed yet.
You're giving the impression that you have all this great information to look at. I think it's going to confuse people. They're not going to know what to make heads and tails of everything that's on our website right now. I think the sooner you fix that, the better, I think. It causes less confusion that way.
Yeah, so to your point, there was a decision made not to take anything off, which I respect and understand. I was advised, like, if you take something off, you're gonna get grief. That thing is what we need on, so, in order for you to find those drone, you had to go into the folder looking for pictures, you had to go down, if they're not in chronological order, they will be. So you shouldn't be happening upon a drone picture when you're in the FAQs. So it is still, we're still getting it. I think our publicity person has made a tremendous, she's done the work for us, and huge change, progress, I think has been great, and there's still more. So I think they'll be pleased at the end, but we're not taking things off because I don't think that's a good idea.
Now, is there a definition of the restrictions that come with the designation of parkland?
FAQ, it's almost ready to be posted. We use.
I've been looking for it.
Yes, there's some great material from the committee that Peter Cole worked on, and our village council is just refining some stuff as far as
And when was it designated parkland and by whom?
2004, I think.
There is some, there are 2 things as far as the restrictions of the property. There was the lawsuit, and then there was the designation after that, which leaves us with the restrictions we have. It's gonna be posted.
To know those things when you're
Yeah.
facing options.
Yes, I have it. I have
Mayor Barbara Miller.
Yes.
Does anyone have any idea how much money has been spent on all the consultants over the years? How many millions of dollars?
We did put in, there was, on the website, there were a lot of these agreements, and they were put into a folder for people who wanna look back and see what all the agreements are. I don't know, it sounds like, Mr. Petoni has asked for that number. I can find out what calculation we have as to the money spent. It's gonna be a lot of different things, not just the consultants.
Let me just mention about money spent. Whatever option you check, whether renovation or demolition, you're not getting any of the past money back.
Oh, I know I'm not. I'm just wondering how much money we've already squandered on having it just sit there.
You know, when I built my house, or actually, when I had my first house, I had no children. And yet, my wife insisted on having many more bedrooms than we had any opportunity to fill. And we didn't fill those for a couple of years as much as I thought we should have. The same situation is you can't, when you plan for the future, there are decisions that you get to make that you cannot unmake depending on which path you take.
No, you can never go back.
Now, you had the comment that when this building went out of service because of problems, where did you get to go? And there is a question of how much space this village has the ability to use. If you wind up taking it down and putting another structure there, that's an opportunity. If you have the building and fix it up, it's there. you can make it into a park. You have to realize those are the options that you are facing for now and in the future. This is the purpose for this poll. What do we want to do?
So to build on that, I have a question for trustees. You know, the opinion poll, and what your opinion is informed on what you're going to get out of an investment. And there's investment in each one of these choices. And, you know, I was inspired from the past couple of years of these town halls, and I made clear my desire or championed an idea. It was received without mercy or malice, and I proved what the operational and management expenses could be offset by programming. And I really want to know, when people who are especially younger and have kids and are busy and don't have time to look at the site, don't come to meet and greets, that frankly are more willing to see a cost increase in their tax base if they're getting something that their family's going to use, and they believe it's going to increase the value of their home, and it makes Garden City unique. When they select their opinion poll, are they going to see, here's the savings, and we're mitigating cost of keeping up St. Paul's for demo, and here are the kind of things that we can do, maybe not in year 1 or year 2, but here are the opportunities for us to grow programs in our village. Are they going to be informed enough to know that they're making a purchase with rewards with their tax dollars?
So, when you look at the ballot, the opinion, I kind of broke down where we're going. In either of those, whichever is, the sentiment of residents, they both will require planning afterwards and decisions afterwards. If there's a vote for demolition, will it be a park, basic park, elaborate park, or a new rec center? That is not going to be a choice here. If it is an adaptive use or a facade project, what's going to be there? What facilities will be included? That would be after this poll as well. We couldn't possibly break it down. Plans were not done for usages to the extent that we could go out. It would also give multiple options. So this is, that's going to be after this opinion poll. I think we look at, and one resident said it's got to have a park on it, and you might say it's got to have a pool on it, and that'll be the conversation, whichever way this goes, which I don't think has really happened yet, and that's an important thing to happen.
By the way, the village is not the sole source of information. And you, as well as all the residents, will have to endeavor to get as much information on this topic as possible, whether from the village, whether from the website, or any other source that is available to you, so that when you make your vote or your polls, it's informed.
But to that point, I would say, if there's some information that you think everyone should have that's not on the website, please tell me, because I'll do everything I can to put it there, because I'd like everyone to have all the information. All right, yes?
I just, based on a lot of the conversation tonight and a lot of the things that have been published, I really think this opinion poll needs to be pushed back so that a lot more information and clarity can be presented to the people so they can intelligently make a decision when you put out the opinion poll. I think there's just too many questions in the air right now for people to realistically come up with the appropriate opinion, because there's just so much information that isn't clear.
We plan to present the clearest information, on the work that's been done. We will present the information for the poll, and if you have questions, we have those boxes around, put them in the box, and we'll get them answered. Anyone else? Questions, comments, thanks for coming? All right. Thank you, everyone.